Good evening, everyone. This is Wayne over at the Alchemical Tech Revolution YouTube channel. Tonight, we're going to look at a little book called The Externalisation of the Hierarchy by Alice A. Bailey. Copyright 1957 by Lucis Trust. And if you are not familiar with Lucis Trust, this is actually the publishing house that handles all of the United Nations documents. And it's also well established that it's also the primary publisher of books for the Theosophical Society as well. And it's formerly known as Lucifer Trust. So that should give you an indication of what's going on here. Now, to preface this tonight, I just want to make it clear that the views expressed in this book are not necessarily my own, or not necessarily those of any of my associates. And although some things that the author touches on in the book have some truth behind them, you could see what the agenda of the controllers of this world have in mind. You could see what agendas that they're pushing towards and how this all ties together. And as we go on, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So we're going to start in section 1 of the book, and this is introductory remarks. And if you're not familiar with the book, this is actually a compilation of different writings of Alice A. Bailey, and a little history on Alice A. Bailey. She was one of the main leaders of the Theosophical Society, one of the proteges of Madame Blavatsky. So this contains an awful lot of esoteric type work and different things of that nature. And you'll see how it kind of gets a little involved with some stranger types of things, occult ideas and things of that nature. Also, Miss Alice Bailey, her husband Foster Bailey was actually a very highly accredited and ranked Freemason who wrote a lot of different Freemasonic books as well. So these people were very serious about this. And you'll see where this is going as we progress through here. I'm just going to read into a short section of the introductory part of the book here. And as I was saying, it's organized in like different categories. Like she has it categorized by different writings that she has done through the years. In fact, the first part in the introductory remarks here is titled The Period of Transition, and she wrote this back in March of 1934. So let's go ahead and start reading here, and I may stop at some points and interject some of the points I would like to make in here as well. So let's carry on here. One of the results of the world condition at this time is the speeding up of all the atomic lives upon and within the planet. This necessarily involves the increased vibratory activity of the human mechanism, with a consequent effect upon the psychic nature, producing an abnormal sensitivity and psychic awareness. It would be of value here to remember that the condition of humanity at this time is not the result of simply one factor, but of several, all of them being active simultaneously, because this period marks the close of one age and the inauguration of the new. Okay, taking a pause here, folks. Listen to that very carefully. This is the close of one age and the inauguration of the new. And she was talking about this all the way back in 1934. And as we go on here, you'll kind of see how some of these ideas do ring true. And, the period of time that we are going into right now, how this is reflected in some of these writings. But you'll also begin to see how the views of these people are very twisted and inverse to the natural order and inverse to the way things should be here in the natural world. So as we move on, you'll kind of see the angle that these folks have taken towards these things. Let's get back to the reading. So we just said, because this period marks the close of one age and the inauguration of the new. So the next sentence here says, the factors to which I refer are primarily 3 in number. Number 1, this is a transition period between the passing out of the Piscean age, with its emphasis upon authority and belief, and coming in of the Aquarian age, with its emphasis upon individual understanding and direct knowledge. Let's take a pause there for a moment, folks. What have we been seeing lately? And specifically, what has Crow been saying on Crow 777 Radio? He's saying that he sees this as being how we're exiting the age of belief and entering an age of knowing. And this is exactly what Alice Bailey is saying here. I think it's apparent that we're definitely at some kind of a conjunction point of the different ages here. I think we're actually seeing a lot of different things unfolding before us, and just exactly what we could make of that, who knows? I mean, that's the whole thing. A lot of this stuff was predicted primarily in the biblical book of Revelation, and there are other places where, these kind of things have been predicted, and it's all talking about the same stuff. I mean, when you go back and you look at things like, say, maybe the Kali Yuga, or, you look at the biblical book of Revelation, you look at these different prophecies of these different societies, and the different religious views and the different views of end time scenarios, you could always see that a lot of these same themes keep coming up. And one of these is the changing of the age. And this has been talked about by a lot of the New Age wackos for a long time now. They're entering the age of Aquarius. And that's kind of what is really going on. I mean, we're at that critical juncture, and we could actually see it in the sky clock, in the map that is the sky, in the stars above us. We've, depending on who you talk to, some people say that we have entered this age of Aquarius back in 1881, and they give various other dates and things like that. But it's kind of questionable because observations of the observer could see that we're clearly still in what could be considered astrologically or astronomically the age of Pisces. We're still in that kind of a framework when you actually observe naturally. But this is talking about this switching of the age. So let's get back to this. I don't want to ramble on too long about that point, but I thought it was important to point it out. So we had said, okay, this is a transition period between the passing of the Piscean age, with its emphasis upon authority and belief, and the coming in of the Aquarian age, with its emphasis upon individual understanding and direct knowledge. The activity of these forces, characteristic of the two signs, produces in the atoms of the human body a corresponding activity. We are on the verge of new knowledges, and the atoms of the body are being tuned up for reception. Those atoms which are predominantly Piscean are beginning to slow down their activity and to be occultly withdrawn, and that's in quotation marks there, as it is called, or abstracted, whilst those which are responsive to the new age tendencies are, in their turn, being stimulated and their vibratory activity increased. Point number 2. The World War, and as an aside here, she's speaking of what they referred to at the time as the Great War, or World War I, because remember, the time of this writing was 1934. So, the World War marked a climax in the history of mankind, and its subjective effect was far more potent than has hitherto been grasped. Through the power of prolonged sound, carried forward as a great experiment on the battlefields all over the world during a period of 4 years from 1914 to 1918, and through the intense emotional strain of the entire planetary populace, the web of etheric matter called the quote-unquote veil of the temple, which separates the physical and astral planes, was rent or torn asunder, and the amazing process of unifying the two worlds of physical plane living and of astral plane experience was begun, and is now slowly going on. It will be obvious, therefore, that this must bring about vast changes and alterations in the human consciousness. I'm going to pause right here and posit the idea. Could this be an actual, a good interpretation of what's really happening? Could this be that so much human misery and suffering caused such a ripple effect throughout the entire world that it actually could have transcended the barriers of the different worlds, per se, the different planes of our reality that we live in? Could it transcend the physical plane and reach into something more spiritual and have possibly rent the veil between the two? I'm wondering, because, like, it seems that we see a lot of phenomena and stuff today that an idea like this could partially explain. I'm speaking, directly here of the Mandela effect, first of all, and of various other things we see going on in the world today, aside from that as well. So you could use your imagination here and understand what this could possibly be talking about, because it's very interesting that she should bring up this point, that the suffering that had happened during the First World War could have this effect in a spiritual plane, perhaps. And that just goes to show that, we don't have a full understanding of where it is we live. And we don't have an understanding of how things here in our physical reality could affect things on a spiritual level, and how this all has a ripple effect through the entire world and through consciousness and through the different realms, per se. So when we look at that, that's an interesting idea, and I thought that was an interesting point to talk about. So let's get back to the reading, though. So it says here, where did we leave off? It will be obvious, therefore, that this must bring about vast changes and alterations in the human consciousness. Whilst it will usher in the age of understanding, of brotherhood, and of illumination, it will also bring about states of reaction and the letting loose of psychic forces which today menace the uncontrolled and ignorant, and warrant the sounding of a note of warning and of caution. A third factor, this is number 3, a third factor is as follows. It has been known for a long time by the mystics of all the world religions and by esoteric students everywhere that certain members of the planetary hierarchy, and that's with a capital H, are approaching closer to the Earth at this time. By this, I want you to infer that the thought or the mental attention of the Christ and of certain of his great disciples, the masters of wisdom, is directed or focused at this time on human affairs, and that some of them are also preparing to break their long silence and may appear later among men. This necessarily has a potent effect, first of all, upon their disciples, and on those who are attuned and synchronized with their minds. And secondly, it should be remembered that the energy which flows through these focal points of the divine will have a dual effect and be destructive as well as constructive, according to the quality of the bodies which react to it. Different types of men respond distinctly to an inflow of energy, and a tremendous psychic stimulation is at this time going on, with results both divinely beneficent and sadly destructive. Okay, I'm going to take a pause there, folks. So, just to put it in context for you, these people, the Theosophists, they believe that certain quote-unquote ascended masters actually could help them to do spiritual works here on Earth. And they count Jesus, or who they call the Christ, as one of these quote-unquote ascended masters, okay? And like I said at the outset of this does not necessarily reflect any of my views or opinions or my beliefs. But this is exactly what they believe, and that's the important part. So whether you believe any of this stuff or not, or find any value in it, you must understand that people in positions of power in this world absolutely believe this stuff, and are absolutely working to try to make these things manifest here in our reality. So, with that being said, let's take another look back through at some key points in that paragraph. So, it says that... let me see. Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. Okay. It says that By this I want you to infer the thought or the mental attention of the Christ and certain of his great disciples, the masters of wisdom, is directed or focused at this time on human affairs, and that some of them are also preparing to break their long silence and may later appear among men. And just earlier it says that these certain members of this planetary hierarchy, as they call it, or these great disciples, these masters of wisdom, are approaching closer to Earth at this time. Okay? Pay very close attention to the wording here that she uses. And that, these ascended masters, these masters of wisdom, are closely attuned to those disciples who are trying to work with them and are synchronizing their minds to them. So this is talking about incursion of spiritual beings from another place. But it's also using the context of, these beings approaching Earth, coming closer to Earth. And that denotes kind of this whole planetary or alien idea. Keep that in mind, folks, because I guarantee you, probably within our lifetimes, there's going to be an announcement that they've discovered alien life somewhere. And this will be a total fabrication, by the way, because this is not exactly what this is talking about. But this is kind of how they will spin this to make it into a kind of a literal representation in our very hyper-materialist society, so that people will have a different idea as to what's coming. So just keep that in mind. So that they're invoking here, Alice Bailey's invoking here the idea of planetary beings, a planetary hierarchy, beings approaching towards the Earth that are going to begin to manifest here very shortly. So this is what she's talking about. And that when these beings or consciousnesses make their presence known, we will go through a divine will, as she calls it, quote unquote, divine will have a dual effect and be destructive as well as constructive, according to the quality of the bodies which react to it. So, clearly, you could see this is invoking the archetype of the destroyer. This would be Lord Shiva in the Indian religions. The one that they have the picture of at the campus of CERN. So you can see how a lot of these different ideas tie together with things that a lot of us in this community are very familiar with. So from there, we could see that she's outlined here that this time will be a time of destruction as well as construction. Because you see, that's kind of how this whole thing works. It's the principle of the phoenix. It's what this archetype is. It's the destruction and rebirth, death and rebirth. That's what these people believe. That's what they're all about. This is why they call themselves the philosophers of fire. Okay? This is the phoenix idea. Everything it goes through this death and rebirth process. Okay? And it's oftentimes attributable to the concept of fire. Fire being, what they would consider a divine element. And this is why they let's make no bones about it, they burn their enemies. That's what happened at Waco. Okay? This is the kind of stuff that they do. That's their calling card. These people who want to have total absolute control here, and make no bones about it, their ultimate goal is to become God here. And they're actually using the transhumanist movement to do so. They believe it's closer than ever before through the use of high technologies. And I know I've discussed this a million times before, and it always falls back to this. But the idea of transhumanism has its roots back in these occultic doctrines. And that's what this is all about. I mean, so we could see here where we see a lot of these crossovers and these different ideas. So they're talking about a cycle of destruction. Okay, this old age is going to go out with fire, and where have we seen that before? Well, of course, we've seen that described in the Bible. where when God makes the promise to man that he'll never flood the world again, but the next time it will be destroyed with fire. Well, these are the philosophers of fire, and they're working to bring that about. So whether you believe that to be true or not, make no bones about it, these people definitely do, and that's what they're going to do. So is this literal fire, or is it symbolic fire that they're going to use to destroy and rebuild the world? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm just telling you just the things that I see and hear, and from years and years and years of researching these occult topics, the different understanding that I've garnered from reading these things and from looking at different sources. But anyway, back to the reading. Let's get back where we left off. It might be added also that certain astrological relationships between the constellations are releasing new types of force, which are playing through our solar system and onto our planet, and thereby making possible developments hitherto frustrated in expression, and bringing about the demonstration of latent powers and the manifestation of new knowledges. All this must be carefully borne in mind by the worker in the field of human affairs if the present crisis is to be rightly appreciated and its splendid opportunities rightly employed. I have felt it wise to write a few words concerning the condition to be found in the world today, especially in connection with esoteric, occult, and mystical groups and the spiritualistic movement. Okay, once again, I'm going to pause here, folks, and just highlight the idea, the manifestation of new knowledges, okay? Here you go. This is technology. This is the technology angle. This is the whole transhumanist angle, the merging of man with machine to become the next step in human evolution. This stuff is way older than most people believe. The idea of technocracy goes way back. They just thought of it in kind of more what you would call quote-unquote magical terms going back years ago. But if you just take these ideas and put the technological parlance on them, use the technological terms or the scientific terms, it's the same thing. And that's what they're aiming for. See, they're bringing this stuff about very covertly, and they understand how to use different occult principles to do this stuff as well. So they're trying to merge these ideas and completely invert our reality so that they could be masters of it and control it. So this is what they're talking about here. But anyway, let's get back. Now, we left off, Alice Bailey had said here that she also felt it wise to write a few words concerning the condition to be found in the world today, especially in connection with esoteric, occult, and mystical groups and the spiritualistic movement. So, let's get back to it. All true spiritual thinkers and workers are much concerned at this time about the growth of crime on every hand, by the display of the lower psychic powers, by the apparent deterioration of the physical body, as shown in the spread of disease, listen to that, the spread of disease, and by the extraordinary increase in insanity, neurotic conditions, and mental unbalance. I'm going to pause right there, folks. Have you looked around the world lately? Boy, this is true in spades right now, isn't it? Let's get back to it. All this is the result of the tearing of the planetary web, or also known as the veil, which we discussed earlier, just an aside there. And at the same time, it is a part of the evolutionary plan and the providing of the opportunity whereby humanity may take its next step forward. I'm going to pause there again, folks. There it is. I just told you about this. Transhumanism. Humanity 2.0, the next step in evolution. Just replace the mystical connotations or the esoteric language, the occult language, the occult ideas, the magical ideas. The things that they taught us or tried to teach us were nonsense and fairy tales and all of that stuff. They taught you this was all gobbledygook and nonsense, okay? There's real power behind a lot of these occult principles, and they're using the technology to achieve this now. So let's get back to it here, okay? So like we just said, part of the evolutionary plan and the providing of the opportunity whereby humanity may take its next step forward. The hierarchy of adepts has been divided in opinion if so unsuitable a word can be applied to a group of souls and brothers who know no sense of separateness, but only differ over problems of quote-unquote skill in action over the present world condition. Some believe it to be premature and consequently undesirable, and providing a difficult providing a difficult situation, whilst others take their stand upon the basic soundness of humanity and regard the present crisis as inevitable and brought about by the developments in man himself. They look upon the condition as educational and as constituting only a temporary problem which, as it is solved, will lead mankind on the way to a still more glorious future. But there is, at the same time, no denying the fact that great and frequently devastating forces may have been let loose upon the earth, and that the effect is a cause of grave concern to all the masters, their disciples, and workers. Did you hear that, folks? There is at the same time no denying the fact that great and frequently devastating forces have been let loose upon the earth, and that the effect is a cause of grave concern to all the masters, their disciples, and workers. Isn't that interesting? Let's move on. The difficulty can, in the main, be traced back to the overstimulation and the undue strain placed upon the mechanism of the bodies, which the world of souls in physical incarnation have to employ as they seek to manifest on the physical plane and so respond to their environment. The flow of energy pouring through from the astral plane and, in a lesser degree, from the lower mental plane is brought in contact with bodies that are unresponsive at first and over-responsive later. It pours into brain cells which, from lack of use, are unaccustomed to the powerful rhythm imposed upon them, and humanity's equipment of knowledge is so poor that the majority have not sense enough to proceed with caution and to progress slowly. Therefore, they are soon in danger and difficulty. Their natures are oft so impure or so selfish that the new powers which are beginning to make their presence felt, and so opening up new avenues of awareness and contact, are subordinated to purely selfish ends and prostituted to mundane objectives. The glimpses vouchsafed to the man of that which lies behind the veil are misinterpreted, and the information gained is misused and distorted by wrong motives. But whether a person is unintentionally a victim of force or brings himself in touch with it deliberately, he pays the price of his ignorance or temerity in the physical body, even though his soul may go marching on. Let's pause there for a moment, folks. Do you hear the hubris here? This Alice Bailey, she's speaking as if she's one of authority and she's better than everybody, and that she doesn't see the fault in her own ways, but she sees it in all these other people who seek these occult ideas or are going down these occult paths, these ritual magic paths and things of that nature. How they're being purely selfish and using the power and the knowledge that they have for selfish purposes and things like that. But these people would never do that, right? You see how they always try to give themselves the moral high ground, even though they don't have it. They think themselves better than us, and that's the bottom line here. So you could see what she's talking about here, and you could also see that they firmly believe that they're letting loose these kinds of energies upon the world here, and they actually actively work towards this stuff. This could be equated to demonic possession of sorts or things of that nature. That's kind of what she's talking about here when it gets down to it. Allowing different spirits access to your physical form to help manifest things here. That's kind of what we're looking at. So, but she says that, the person who may unintentionally be a victim of this force brings himself in touch with it deliberately. He pays the price of his ignorance or temerity in the physical body, even though his soul may go marching on. Let's continue on here. It gets a little more interesting here. It is of no use at this time to close one's eyes to the immediate problem or to endeavor to lay the blame for the sad failures. The occult wrecks for the half-demented psychics, the hallucinated mystics, and the feeble-minded dabblers in esotericism at the door of their own stupidity or upon the backs of some teachers, groups, or organizations. Much blame can indeed be placed here and there, but it is the part of wisdom to face facts and to realize the cause of that which is everywhere transpiring and which can be stated as follows. And we'll pause here for a moment again, folks. There's that hubris again, right? She's better than everybody else. I've seen this with so many people who study these occult ideas or consider themselves magicians or things like that. They're so arrogant. They think they have all the answers. They think they know it all. They think they're much better than everybody else. They're more powerful. But these other stupid dunderheads, they don't know what they're doing. And, they're the ones that cause misery and strife. And they don't... these arrogant people like this, they don't see the fault in their ways. They think that they're just it. And this is the whole mentality of the transhumanist movement. These are the people at the top of the transhumanist movement. They believe themselves better than the masses, or the fumbling scientists that are bringing about the technologies to do this. They see themselves as being superior, and that's kind of the attitude and the spirit, the spiritual undertone that goes along with this stuff. But let's read on, okay? Like I said, you could take some of these things, take the occult or the quote-unquote magical or whatever principles you want to call this here, and replace them with scientific terms, and it's the same thing. And I'm telling you, it's the same thing. It's just different language, okay? It's just different language propping it up. That's all that it is. That's the only difference from that time to this time. And, that's kind of where it's at. So let's continue on. The cause of growth of the lower psychism and of the increasing sensitivity of humanity at this time is the sudden inflow of a new form of astral energy through the rent veil which has, until a short while ago, safeguarded the many. Add to this the inadequacy of the mass of human vehicles to meet the newly imposed strain, and some idea of the problem can be grasped. I'll pause right there. Is this an allusion to the quote-unquote problem of overpopulation? I think it is, folks. Well, what do you know? It's always the same thing. It's same pig, just different lipstick on it. Okay? Let's make it perfectly clear. There's the eugenics idea again. Okay, let's get back to it. Let it not be forgotten, however, that there is another side to the picture. The inflow of this energy has brought many hundreds of people into a new and deeper spiritual realization. It has opened a door through which many will pass before long and take their second initiation. Listen to that, second initiation. And it has let a flood of light into the world, a light which will go on increasing for the next 30 years, bringing assurance of immortality and a fresh revelation of the divine potencies in the human being. Thus is the new age dawning. Access to levels of inspiration hitherto untouched has been facilitated. The stimulation of the higher faculties, and this on a large scale, is now possible, and the coordination of the personality with the soul and the right use of energy can go forward with renewed understanding and enterprise. Ever the race is to the strong, and always the many are called and the few chosen. This is the occult law. Okay, gonna pause right there, folks. You hear that? This is the new age dawning. There it is. This is what this has been about the whole time. This is where we're going right now. This is all these things that all of these occultists for many hundreds of years now have been talking about. And, I would say only hundreds of years. Some people would argue going back thousands of years. But Theosophy came about around the mid-1800s, and that's where most of these ideas and things come from, is the Theosophy movement, which kind of encapsulates different other secret society groups and things like that. Things like, the Golden Dawn and the OTO and different organizations like that. They all have their bearings together in this theosophical movement. Before that, yeah, there were different secret society groups and stuff like that, but Madame Blavatsky was had a big hand in bringing a lot of these different scattered occult ideas together into one place, and that would be the Theosophical Society. So a lot of these different groups are kind of sub-branches of that, or they have different members that interchange between these different groups, like the Theosophical Society and these different secret societies and things like that. They also have always had a close working relationship with the Freemasons, and in fact, the Theosophical Society, or Theosophy, is also known as quote-unquote co-Masonry. So that's an interesting crossover for people to understand. A lot of these occult secret societies, they all have the same interchanging memberships at different levels. When you get to the higher levels of these secret society groups, something beyond the Blue Lodge, as it's known here, for the Freemasons, if you get beyond that, there's different occult fraternities and different levels that have different functions, and they all kind of interchange. And this is kind of what we collectively would call the quote-unquote Illuminati. That's where that idea really comes from. All these different secret societies at the topmost levels, they all interconnect. And that's the thing people need to understand, too. So there's central planning that goes on with a lot of this stuff. And Theosophy has kind of made a lot of things apparent. It brings it all to one place. And the Theosophical Society also has a close working relationship with the United Nations, folks. Isn't that interesting? So, anyway, let's get back to the reading here. I don't want to get off on too many different tangents, but we just left off here with where Alice Bailey says, "This is the occult law." Okay, whether that's true or not, that's disputable. But anyway, back to it. We are now in a period of tremendous spiritual potency and of opportunity to all upon the probationary path and the path of discipleship. It is the hour wherein a clarion call goes forth to man to be of good cheer and of good will, for deliverance is on the way. But it is also the hour of danger and of menace for the unwary and the unready, for the ambitious, the ignorant, and for those who selfishly seek the way, and the way is capitalized, by the way, and who refuse to tread the path of service with pure motive, lest the widespread upheaval and consequent disaster to so many should seem to you unfair. Let me remind you that this one life is but a second of time in the larger and wider existence of the soul, and that those who fail and are disrupted by the impact of the powerful forces now flooding our earth will nevertheless have their vibration stepped up to better things along with the mass of those who achieve, even if their physical vehicles are destroyed in the process. The destruction of the body is not the worst disaster that can overcome a man. Let's pause right there. What does that tell you, folks? If their physical vehicles are destroyed in the process, they're going to achieve better things. See, that's the thing. These people are so hubristic. They think that by destroying you or culling the population, that they're doing them a favor. That is their honest belief and how they honestly feel. They think they're doing something good by destroying humanity. Think about that for a minute. That is the twisted mindset here. They think if you can't make the evolutionary jump, then they're doing you a favor by destroying you, because you don't belong in their new age. You won't make it in their new age. See? That's the mindset here. That's the spirit behind this. The destruction of the body is not the worst disaster that can overcome a man. And although that's a true statement, in my view, is that really how we should proceed here? I don't think so. That doesn't sound like something that a quote-unquote a good disciple or something would really kind of endorse here. Anyway, let's continue on here. She says here, let's continue. It is not my purpose to cover the whole ground possible in relation to the situation in the field of psychism caused by the inflow of astral energy at this time. I seek to confine myself to the effect of this inflow on aspirants and sensitives. These two words, aspirants and sensitives, are employed by me in this article to distinguish the awakened seeker after control and mastery from the lower type of psychic who is controlled and mastered. See, let's take a pause there again. She's using different terms, aspirants and sensitives, and she's naming people here to distinguish between who she calls, quote-unquote, awakened seekers after control and mastery, and the lower types of psychism, or the lower types of psychics, which are the quote-unquote controlled and mastered. See, there it is again. There's the class warfare. There's the eugenics idea. It's all encapsulated right there. There's the we're superior, you're inferior. There's going to be this break in humanity, and those of us who are the superior ruling class will, we're better than you, and we'll have control over you. And let's go down and continue on here now. So it says, it is necessary here to remind you that psychism, so-called, can be divided into the two following groups. And she has them broken down here in a little chart. The first chart says higher psychism, and under higher psychism, there's some descriptive terms here. It says it's divine, it's controlled, it's positive, it's intelligently applied, and mediatorship. Okay? Then there's lower psychism. Instead, right across the chart from divine, it says animal, and these are the corresponding principles between the two. If you look, higher psychism is divine, lower psychism, animal. So they're saying right there that you're the material animal. This is the hyper-materialist trap that we're being shifted into. This is the paradigm we're being pushed into. See, this is what the controllers want. They want to have, they want to be divine. They want to be the rulers. They want to have this higher position than you. So they believe themselves to be divinely inspired. And when it comes down to it, what these people truly believe is that unless you're even initiated into one of their secret orders, you don't even have a soul. That's what a lot of them believe at the topmost levels of these groups. They just see you as nothing more than cattle or animals. And this proves it out right here. So let's continue on. Also under lower psychism, across from where in the higher psychism category or column it says controlled, it says uncontrolled. And higher psychism says positive, lower psychism says negative. Higher psychism says intelligently applied, lower psychism says automatic, or, that's kind of like what we would call like your limbic brain or something like that. Think about that. They're saying that they have the higher intelligence. That's the attribute of them, and the lower psychism is the attribute of the limbic system. Those automatic responses your body does without you thinking about it. Then in higher psychism it says mediatorship, and in lower psychism it says mediumship. So let's distinguish between those two. Mediatorship means pretty much control. We'll step in and mediate, and we'll control things. Mediumship means you're just a vessel being controlled by somebody when it comes down to it, or by something. So this is what the distinction they have in mind. So see, they have the people separated into these two categories here. So let's continue on. These distinctions are little understood, nor is the fact appreciated that both groups of qualities indicate our divinity. All are expressions of God. See that? I'm going to pause right there again. See that? How she's saying all of these are expressions of God. So it's your divine place to be an animal, to be a slave, to be a stooge, used by the greater people, the greater race. We'll get there. We'll get there. It's in here too. This is racism tied up in this as well, folks. We'll see that when we get down further. Okay, let's keep going. There are certain psychic powers which men share in common with the animals. These powers are inherent in the animal body and are instinctual, but they have, for the vast majority, dropped below the threshold of consciousness and are unrealized and therefore useless. These are the powers, for instance, of astral clairvoyance and clairaudience, and the seeing of colors and similar phenomena. Clairvoyance and clairaudience are also possible on mental levels, and we then call it telepathy, and the seeing of symbols for all visioning of geometric forms in mental clairvoyance. All these powers are, however, tied up with the human mechanism or response apparatus, and serve to put the man in touch with aspects of the phenomenal world for which the response mechanism, which we will call the personality, exists. They are the product of the activity of the divine soul in man, which takes the form of what we call, quote unquote, the animal soul, which really corresponds to the Holy Ghost aspect in the human microcosmic trinity. All these powers have their higher spiritual correspondences, which manifest when the soul becomes consciously active and controls its mechanism through the mind and the brain. When astral clairvoyance and clairaudience are not below the threshold of consciousness, but are actively used and functioning, it means that the solar plexus center is open and active. And they're referring there to the chakras there, folks. When the corresponding mental faculties are present in consciousness, then it means that the throat center and the center between the eyebrows are becoming awake and active. But the higher psychic powers, such as spiritual perception with its infallible knowledge, the intuition with its unerring judgment, and psychometry of the higher kind with its power to reveal the past and the future, are the prerogatives of the divine soul. These higher powers come into play when the head and heart centers, as well as the throat center, are brought into activity as the result of meditation and service. So I'm going to pause right there again, folks. You see, this woman claims that, if you get to be a high enough adept, you could have these powers. You'll know the future. You'll know the past. You'll be able to know all of this stuff. You'll be able to have clairvoyance and clairaudience. You'll be able to know all these things and do all these things. It's nonsense, folks. When it comes down to it, it's nonsense. This woman did not have these abilities. No amount of seeking could have gotten her to these abilities. This is a trap, okay? For those people that seek out occult wisdom and occult knowledge and this quote-unquote magical power or whatever you want to call it, it's all lies and deceptions. This is the carrot that they dangle before you to get you chasing after this stuff. This is how these secret societies work. They always dangle a secret in front of you. This unattainable secret. See, you could do this. You could become God. That's the promise, okay? And that's where all of this stuff comes into play when we get to the whole transhumanist idea and stuff here too, and the technocracy idea. They dangle these carrots in front of people, always seeking after this one greater secret. The biggest secret at the top of the orders, folks, okay, is that there is no secret, okay? That's the bottom line. They'll try to dangle all these ideas. Well, if you get to be, as adept as I am, you'll be able to do this and that and have these powers and abilities and be able to see the future and know things and this and that. And you know what? It don't work like that. Seeking this initiation through these initiatory rites and these secret societies, it's all a deception. See, this is the biggest secret of all. It's the secret on how to control people. Okay? That's what they teach. That's what the ones at the topmost levels of the power structure know how to do. They know how to entice people into doing their will by offering them these ideas. And at the end of the day, these ideas are false. They're largely false. I've never seen any evidence to support that any of these things she's talking about here are necessarily doable. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. And I believe some people can tap into different psychic abilities and things of that nature. But I don't think it's the product of seeking down this type of a path in the secret societies. They use it as a means to control people. They promise you that, if you follow my teachings and do what I say, then at some point you'll become, an enough of an adept that you'll be able to do these things. And then eventually you'll become an ascended master. See, that's how it works with these people. They use these promises to try and entice people. And then by the time a lot of these people get far enough down the road and realize, well, some of them may realize what's going on, it's too late for them to back out because they're hip deep in this stuff. And they've got just so many things that could be used against them. They're blackmailable. See, this is the same way it works with politics. It's a blackmail economy. Once they know what things you've done that are a little bit unsavory, they could use that against you. So you dare not rat them out either. And you just try to go along to get along. And that's largely what happens at, a lot of times when these people get high enough in these secret societies. They figure out, hey, you know what? I think I'm on the wrong side here. And, sometimes people try to walk away from that, and sometimes they just go along and keep quiet because that's the only way they could get through. But anyway, that's neither here or there. So let's continue on here. So she says here, continuing, let the student, however, remember two things. That the greater can always include the lesser, but the purely animal psychic does not include the higher. So see that? The greater can always include the lesser. So what she's saying here is you could be, one of these greater, these higher psychism people, but still only kind of physically manifest in, an animal psychic type way. But, the animals, the people lesser than us, they could never get better. Okay, you're good like us. So this is a means of control too. This is kind of like a puffing somebody up kind of thing. Playing on their ego. So this is something that of course she would tell her disciples or whatever, the people following her. Just because you don't see that you have these powers, it doesn't mean you're not on the right side. You just got to keep working at it. You see, that's the whole idea. This is how they entice people and get people caught up in this stuff. It's really kind of, it really is disturbing at times that they get these people caught up in these different ideas and try to convince them of this stuff and get them wrapped up in this game. And it's a mental game, folks. It's a psychological game. See, that's the biggest secret at the top of it all. The psychological tricks and tactics that you use to control people. And it's being used to manipulate society at large at this point. Let's continue on, though. That between the lowest type of negative mediumship and the highest type of inspired teacher and seer are found a vast diversity of grades, and that the centers are not uniformly developed in humanity. See that? There it is again. She's saying, well, just because you can't do these things, maybe you're just not enough of an adept yet. You haven't hit that level quite yet, but you could keep working towards it because you're not one of the animals or the general public. So you can kind of see where this goes. See, that's the carrot that they dangle in front of people to keep them doing their will. Let's continue on. The complexity of the subject is great, but the general situation can be grasped. The significance of the opportunity proffered can be understood, and the right use of knowledge be employed to bring good out of the present critical period, and thus the psychic and spiritual growth of man can be fostered and nurtured. Okay, so you see what she's doing there. She's telling people, you could have these extraordinary abilities. You could learn all this stuff. I could teach you these secrets. You need to follow me, do what I say, and we need to work towards this bringing in of this quote-unquote hierarchy. And that's what it's all about. Now, next part, I'm going to skip down here a little bit. We're going to skip down to a different writing here she did called The Present Urgency, and this was written October 10th, 1934. I have somewhat to say to those who are the recipients of my words as embodied in my books and pamphlets, and who, with mental interest and devotion, follow out as far as may be my line of thought. See how, first of all, just as an aside here, see how self-centered she is, how full of herself she is here. I have somewhat to say to those who are the recipients of my words as embodied in my books and pamphlets. See, she's presenting herself as an authority on these things, but she's really not offering people anything of value. She's just telling them, follow me. And, she does sprinkle through some true information and some, good occult ideas. Well, I guess you could call them good, like feasible occult ideas in here, or feasible esoteric kind of knowledge in here in little bits and pieces. But it's nothing that is going to lead to anything good for people. Okay, it's just leading to more control and more followers and disciples for her. That's what she's doing here. You could kind of see the writing on the wall if you learn to read between the lines. Anyway, let's continue on. She says, I have for years, ever since 1919, and you want to count the ways there, folks, sought to aid you to the best of my ability. The hierarchy, here we go, this gets interesting here, listen, pay attention. The hierarchy, a name covering the working disciples of all degrees, has for hundreds of generations sought to aid humanity, and since the 15th century has steadily approached closer to the physical plane and sought to make a deeper impact on the human consciousness. And I'm going to pause right there, folks. The 15th century she's talking about. She's saying how this quote-unquote hierarchy has steadily approached closer to the physical plane. Listen to that. Steadily approached closer. So she's talking about spiritual ideas here. She's talking about a spiritual hierarchy, not the hierarchy in the sense of what she says up here when she says the hierarchy, and she says in parentheses, a name covering the working disciples of all degrees. Okay? She's talking about spiritual beings on the other side of the veil, as well as people here trying to bring those spiritual beings here. Okay? So this is what we're talking about, and you could see if you have, if you know how to read between the lines properly, and you could look at our technology situation and apply the same kind of precepts here from a technological angle, and I've talked about this in my books and such, where through the use of this transhumanist movement and the merging of man with machine, you create a vessel that is not natural and doesn't belong here in our natural reality. So this could potentially be a gateway for a spiritual being from, say, the other side of the veil somewhere, or from some other place that doesn't belong here to manifest physically in this world. So, you know, when you try to tie these ideas together, you tie these occult or, you know, esoteric or quote-unquote magical ideas together with the modern parlance of our technology, and you could actually see the parallels. And, you know, they talk about this. You could see, was it Geordie Rose talked about this would be with the quantum computers and stuff, and with the advent of artificial intelligence, how this is kind of like quote-unquote summoning the demon. He said this. Geordie Rose, he was the chief operating officer of D-Wave quantum computing, and he's run, you know, several other different businesses and things too. So this guy, he's a serious scientist. He talks about these different kinds of spiritual aspects to the use of these technologies. So it's not just me putting together the idea of these occult ideas being used in a technological means. There's other people, and these people are serious scientists and stuff, who kind of have the same kind of thing. Aren't they always talking about CERN, about possibly, you know, getting communication with an alternate universe or something like that? This is the same kind of idea. You see, all you have to do is take out the occult parlance and put a technological parlance on it. It's the same stuff. Okay? This stuff has been going on for a long time, and this is kind of what they're working towards. They're just putting different lipstick on the pig, folks. That's what I keep saying. It's all the same stuff. It's the same thing we see over and over. It's just a shiny new veneer on it. That's all. Anyway, so let's get back to the reading here. So she says here, for hundreds of generations sought to aid humanity, and since the 15th century has steadily approached closer to the physical plane and sought to make a deeper impact on the human consciousness. This has resulted in a recognition which has in it, at this time, the seeds of world salvation. Gonna pause right there, folks. World salvation, huh? What salvation are they talking about? Well, what do we know about salvation? Like, who is the key figure that we know who offers us salvation? Well, that would be Jesus, right? Well, this is an alternate Jesus they're talking about. This is Antichrist. This is the spirit of Antichrist. Let's continue on. Until the 15th century, the pull and the magnetic appeal was from the side of the watching elder brothers. Today, so numerous are the inner and outer disciples, and so many are the world aspirants, the pull and the magnetic appeal are largely equalized. And what will happen in the world unfoldment and in the recognitions by the races will be the result of mutual interplay of the two intents. And she says in parentheses here, I am choosing my words with care. And I'll attest to that. She's definitely using her words with care here. But why is she using her words with care? Well, it's to cover up the true meanings of what she's saying, so that only those who have been read into, the rights of the higher orders here will understand what it is she's saying. Okay? So let's continue. It says, the intent of the masters to help humanity, and that of the world aspirants and disciples to aid in that helping. And let's go back and just review a couple of these sentences here. It says, what will happen in the world unfoldment and in its recognitions by the races, be careful, listen to that, races, she's talking about races, will be the result of mutual interplay of the two intents. And she's talking about the magnetic appeal from the side of the watching elder brothers. So who's these watching elder brothers? Well, these could be referred to in extra biblical texts like the Book of Enoch as, say, the Watchers. And what do we know about that? This is talking about fallen angels, folks. If you want to make the distinction there, this is who's watching from the other side of the veil. This is who they're trying to bring forth. See? Listen to that. If you read between the lines, you can see what she's talking about. So, let's go ahead and continue on here. And it gets more interesting as we go. So let's go on. Esoterically speaking, a point of contact, a moment of spiritual intercourse, in parentheses, or not parentheses, in quotation marks, sorry, is imminent. And out of that moment, a new world can be born. Let's pause again. A point of contact, a moment of spiritual intercourse, is imminent. And out of that moment, a new world can be born. This is exactly talking about the arrival of the Antichrist, folks. This falls back to also different ideas, such as in occultism and occult history here. Things like what the disciples of Aleister Crowley tried to perform, and we're talking about Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard back in the Nevada desert in the 1940s. This would be like the Babylon working. This is the same kind of thing. All this stuff, it's all the same thing. I'm telling you, it's all interconnected. It all ties together. It's all about trying to invoke the spirit of Antichrist into the world, and it's the same thing going on today with transhumanism. This is just the next step. This is how they actually are able to bring these spiritual manifestations into physical reality by changing the gateway, which is the human mind, and attaching it to something artificial, a computer network, an integrated computer network. So this is what it's talking about. And I know it may sound very far out there for some people listening, but I assure you, the deeper you dig into this, the more you will find that this is true. This is what it's about. This is what we're looking at. This is, all revealed in the book of Revelation and stuff as well. So let's go ahead. We'll continue on here. Let's see. Okay, here's where we left off. If that can be brought about, then there can be reestablished on earth the condition which was brought to an end in earlier days, when the hierarchy, in order to further man's mental development, withdrew behind the scenes for a period. If this spiritual contact can be brought about, it means that the hierarchy will no longer be hidden and unknown, but will be recognized as present upon the physical plane. This would at first be necessarily on a small scale, and the recognition will be confined to the aspirants and disciples. Increasingly, the new group of world servers will be active in every nation and found functioning throughout the entire world. Gonna pause there again, folks. Doesn't this sound like an alien invasion narrative? Yeah, it does. Keep that in mind as we move forward here. Anyway, so let's get back to what Alice Bailey says here. Let's continue on. The two thoughts which I seek to impress upon your minds are, first, the reestablishing of this closer relation, and secondly, the work of a practical kind that each of you can do to bring about this general recognition. I seek to emphasize the point that the final activity which will bring about the spiritual event must come from the outer plane of physical life. All of us who are occupied with the plan for the next 3 years, it says in parentheses or in quotation marks, are seeking, and that's code, folks. Let me just break that down. That's code. The next 3 years, she's not talking about a literal 3 years, okay? That's code. That's why she put it in quotation marks, the next 3 years. What that exactly means, I haven't really ascertained yet, because I don't really have the cipher to decode the coded language here, because these people oftentimes will put things, cryptic things, in the written words that they put down that only people who have the verbal teaching, the secret verbal teaching from them, would understand. So I'm not sure what this time frame she's talking about is, but it says, anyway, back to the reading. All of us who are occupied with the plan, and that's a capital P for the word plan, for the next 3 years, in quotation marks, are seeking earnestly for those who can help us and to whom appeal can be made for the putting forth of the final last effort which will bring the desired and anticipated result. I would preface what I have to say with the reminder that I only make a suggestion, and that not that I say carries with it the slightest weight of authority, and also that I am aware of the frequent futility of such appeals for cooperation. So see, here's another aside here. So Alice Bailey is distancing herself by saying, I only make a suggestion, okay, about this. So, and, saying that what she says doesn't carry the slightest weight of authority, even though she, presents herself as an authority figure in this movement, and she's actually, see, that's more coded language. What she's telling you is, this is the plan, this is what we're doing, I am an authority, and you should do exactly what I'm telling you here, but they have to always put in the plausible deniability part. I never said that. I didn't tell people to do that. So that she could kind of distance herself from anybody who does something unsavory to bring about this change they want in the world. She could take a step back and say, oh, that's not, anything I said to them. They misunderstood, that kind of thing. See, that's another way that the power structure operates. They keep things purposely vague a lot of times, or they use like negative language towards it. You'll notice that in a lot of different policy papers and think tank papers that they put out too. They always talk about for the good of society, and they talk about morality issues and things like that, and how they won't approach things in something that would be an unmoral way and that kind of thing. You could always read between the lines and know that they mean the exact opposite of what they're saying, because that's just the way these people operate. Anyway, let's get back to this. So let's continue. Here's where we left off. The history of the world The history of the world of thought evidences the fact that men are oft thrilled and enlightened and aided by ideas and by the promise of a developing future, but that when their aid is sought in the materializing of the idea, then their hope and interest fade out on the mental plane, or, if it reaches the world of emotion and of strong desire, The sacrifice required to bring the hope to birth on the physical plane is lacking or too feeble to produce the longed-for result. Pausing again there. See, the sacrifice required to bring the hope to birth on the physical plane is lacking or too feeble to produce the longed-for result. So, once again, there she's making an allusion to sacrifice as being an essential part of bringing something into materialization, something worthwhile into materialization. Interesting, isn't it? How when you read between the lines, you could kind of see these different intentions built into the words here that she's talking about. And, in the very same paragraph where she's talking about, people being enlightened and aided by ideas of promise of a developing future. And, at the same token saying, but they never seem to manifest it because they haven't sacrificed enough to get it. See, that's kind of the underlying meaning there. Anyway, let's continue on. I don't want to ramble on too long. What I have to say, as a result of the urgency upon me to bring about a more intensive cooperation upon the part of those who read with interest the pamphlet The Next 3 Years, a treatise on white magic, a treatise on the 7 rays, carries not the smallest fraction of authority. Okay, gonna pause there again, folks. See, she's telling people, hey, you know what? You'll understand this better if you read more of my work and follow me, but I don't have authority. See how she, steps away from the ideas presented there, even though she's the one that presented them. Anyway, but that's neither here or there. I haven't looked at either of these treatises that she mentions here, but I'll have to take a peek at what exactly they say. I probably won't be surprised by what I find, but anyway, let's get back to the reading here, because we're going to get to the interesting part here very soon. It says, I only appeal to you in the hope of intensifying your effort for the space of the next 2 years. One has already passed, because after the early autumn of 1936, any effort along this particular line will either have failed or will no longer be required in this particular form. So she's making allusion to the autumn of 1936. So let's kind of count the ways there. 36, that's your 3 6's idea. That's your 666 idea. Autumn, the fall. Always using these alchemical ideas and archetypes, the numerology and everything. This is coded language, once again. Anyway, we won't dwell on that because I've gone off on enough tangents here. Continuing on. My sole responsibility is to put the opportunity before the world aspirants, to point out to them the inherent possibilities of this particular situation, to indicate lines of helpful activity, and then, having so done, to withdraw the power of my mind and thought, and so leave each aspirant free to come to his own decisions. Okay, gonna pause again there. I know I go off on a lot of tangents here, but I think it's important that you understand what she's saying. So she's saying, okay, she's like the prophetess or whatever. She's the all-important one. She's just giving people this information and these ideas so that they could act on it how they see fit to bring about what she wants. But, that's not her responsibility. Her sole responsibility is to present them with this. And then, they go and do what she pretty much manipulates them into doing. But she didn't do it, so, she's got plausible deniability for things. Anyway, let's continue on. The pamphlet The Next 3 Years is going forth today upon its mission. Its objective is to educate public opinion. It carries both inspiration and the power to produce cleavages in the life. Cleavages which will produce new activities and the cessation of old attitudes of mind. A possible happening is indicated, the formation upon the physical plane of that group of aspirants and disciples which, given time and opportunity, can salvage a distressed world and bring light and understanding to humanity. As to this, I need say no more. And I'll pause once again there. Okay, so she's talking about this pamphlet she wrote called The Next 3 Years again. And this, I think, is what she may have been alluding to earlier. Still, once again, it's coded talk. It's not talking about a literal 3 years, I guarantee you. It may be, it may say it in the actual physical writing itself, but there's something else inferred there that only people who got the verbal education within the certain secret societies would understand. So this is talking about much more than that, but it's talking about the producing cleavages which will produce new activities and the cessation of old attitudes of mind. Don't we see that going on in society right now? Boy, we have all kinds of new activities, don't we? We put masks on our face. We stand 6 feet apart from each other. We only talk to each other on the internet. We don't actually get to physically go inside restaurants and sit down and act like normal human beings. Those are old attitudes of mind, you see. Having, fellowship with your fellow man. Those are old attitudes, and they need to be replaced with new activities, see. And only then can, these wonderful aspirants, that follow these ideas, only then can they salvage this distressed world and bring light and understanding to humanity. So, need I say more there, Alice Bailey? Let's continue on. It says, all of you have read the plan as it is embodied in the pamphlet, and the challenge to faith and to appeal to your service is before you. The next 2 years will see the decision as to whether the fusion of the inner and the outer groups of world servers can be made, or whether more time must elapse before the earlier ancient cooperation between the hierarchy and humanity can be reestablished. Okay, gonna pause right there. There it is, folks. There is the surefire tell that this woman is a charlatan at best, okay, and I don't know what you could call it, somebody very wicked at worst, okay, because what she's doing there is she's saying, okay, these next 2 years you'll see the decision as to whether we will be able to bring about the merging of the hierarchy with humanity or not, or it might not happen just yet. See, she's playing the part of the prophetess or the prophet, saying that this is going to come to fruition in the next 2 years, but if it doesn't, it's only because you guys weren't good enough yet. See, that's how this works. So, she's got that, first of all, that plausible deniability, and she tries to save face because, oh, well, that's why I'm the all-knowing one, but it didn't come about because, you guys just weren't ready for it. It's all the rest of you. You see how the hubris here works and how, they use this kind of deception to manipulate people. Okay, well, let's get back to it. I speak with love and almost anxiety, and with a wider knowledge of the present urgency that you can possibly have. I couch what I have to say to you in the form of certain questions, which I ask that you should put to yourselves with quietness and sincerity. Question 1. Do I really and in truth desire the establishment of this closer interplay between the inner and outer worlds? If so, what am I prepared to do in order to bring this about? Do you see the mind control and the mind warping programming going on here, folks? Number 2, is there any way in which I can make a definite contribution towards this desired end? Recognizing my special circumstances, what more can I give in, first of all, meditation, in understanding of the plan, or in love of my fellow man? Forget not that meditation clarifies the mind as to the fact and nature of the plan, that understanding brings that plan into the world of desire, and that love releases the form which will make the plan materialize upon the physical plane. To these 3 expressions of your soul I call you. All of you, without exception, can serve in these 3 ways if you so desire. You hear that? You can meditate, you can understand the plan, and love your fellow man. Doesn't sound all that negative, does it? Well, you got to figure what else is all couched in this idea that they're not telling you here. What's the hidden motivations behind it? What's the intent? What have we determined about the intent or the intention of this woman from the get-go here? Anyway, let's continue on. Number 3. The objective of all the work to be done at this time is to educate public opinion and to familiarize the thinking people of the world with the urgency and the opportunity of the next 2 years. If this is indeed so, what am I doing to make this possible? To elaborate this question, first, have I spoken to all I could in my environment, or have I been held back by fear? Or secondly, have I made possible the wide distribution of the pamphlet on the subject? Its distribution is in its present form is possible only until the fall of 1936, and the time is therefore short. You hear that? So she's talking about this pamphlet once again, and I'm telling you, folks, this is coded talk because there's the fall of 1936 again, and the time is short, and that's an allusion to the Book of Revelation again, right there, because let him count the number of his name. And also, the devil sends the beast with wrath because he knows the time is short. There it is. It's all right there in that same sentence. And that's the thing. A lot of times these people use coded language like that to convey ideas. And only once you get better at looking at a lot of this stuff, you can pick out the inference that they put in a sentence. So that's what she's talking about right there. Once again, we're looking at the Antichrist idea, okay? Also, have I aided in a material and financial way as far as is possible? Can I do more than I have done so far to help to meet this requirement? There it is. There's always financing and material things in there. Have I aided in a material or a financial way? And that's where the rubber meets the road with a lot of these people. They seek that kind of worldly wealth and power and stuff like that. So they have these fools given of their time and their money and their resources to help them bring about these kind of ideas. Anyway, let's move on here. The next one is, what more of my time can I give to help this work, to aid those who are distributing the pamphlet, or to gather people together for discussion? Can I not dedicate some time every day to this definite idea and service? Pay attention to that word service. She talks about it here a lot. She's looking for people to serve this whole Antichrist ideal. Let's continue on. Responding to my appeal will involve sacrifice. Listen very carefully, folks. Responding to my appeal will involve sacrifice, but all who grasp the plan are today spending themselves in the effort to lift humanity up to another rung of the ladder and into greater light. Their hands need strengthening, their work needs helping, and there is not one of you who cannot do more than you are doing, through the aid of meditation, money, and thought, to salvage the world, to educate public opinion, and so bring in the new day. And those are in capital letters. What do you think about that? I think we're going to just end this right there. There's an awful lot more in this document that's very telling. And you could know the fruits of a actually the nature of a tree by its fruits. And the fruits of theosophy are confusion and destruction and manipulation. Okay, and we can see this through their one of their organizations that they work through a lot, the United Nations, which also has a relationship to the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, and all the various other things. These ideas are all interlaced through all of these quote-unquote one world government type groups, because that's the plan, folks. You see, at the top of the power structure here, and all of these dark occultists that run things, the ultimate plan is universal communism. That's it in a nutshell. They'll call it something different. They call it collectivism, okay, or democratic socialism. They use many different names for this, and make no mistake about it, okay? Occultism and government are deeply tied together, and their ultimate plan is to bring about this communist ideal, or this communitarian ideal, however you want to call it, through the use of technology, and this is called technocracy. And it's coming, folks. They're setting up the control grid as we speak. That's what's going on in the world today. Has everything to do with transhumanism, has everything to do with government, has everything to do with the occult and the dark occultists that run things. They plan on bringing this stuff about. It has everything to do with the things mentioned in the book of Revelation. Everything from the mark of the beast all the way on up, the rest of it, the Antichrist, all of it. It all ties together in this technocratic plan. this transhumanist control grid that's being set up right now. This is, in the view of the controllers of this world, these dark occultists and these technocrats of inversion, these ones that seek to invert the natural order and totally control the earth, this is their fulfillment of their quote-unquote great work, or the Philosopher's Stone. This is what they're seeking to do, and Alice Bailey outlines it very well. What they're seeking to do is bring in the Antichrist spirit and the Antichrist spirit's compatriots, these different spiritual forces, into the world. Okay, that's exactly what they're talking about. And they're going to do this through technocracy. And we could watch it going on in the world around us. This is what this talks about. This is the externalization of the hierarchy. The hierarchy will come into public view very soon. How this will look, who could say for sure? Okay, but I do think they may use the false alien invasion narrative to make something like this manifest, to make it more believable to the modern parlance in the modern world. Okay, they may use that as a way of doing it, but be assured, it's not really aliens. It's most likely going to be something brought about by the artificial intelligence control grid and the merging of man with machine. That's more likely what we're going to see. It's probably going to be the result of genetic engineering of sorts, or the uses of technology. And that's what the quote-unquote real alien will look like. But that's probably the narrative they'll give us, this false alien invasion type scenario. Or, the aliens have been coming here for years and secretly working with just a few adepts in government or in these secret programs. That's what Alice Bailey was talking about here, too. See, they might use that narrative to fool the world into buying into this whole idea. Oh, and they're here to help us. They're our space brothers. Have you heard that? The Space Brothers? They're our Space Brothers, and they're here to help. They're so interested in us. They just want to help us, but we've been just so very backwards and behind spiritually and stuff. But now we're just about ready, and they're going to help us, and they're going to solve all the world's problems, and it's going to be great. All you got to do is take the chip, take the vaccine, all of that kind of thing. I don't know how this will come about, or these a lot of what I'm saying here is just my speculations as to ways they might try to present this kind of scenario to people to make it more believable to them. Okay, and they've really been pushing the whole alien agenda very hard in the recent decades. So that may be a way they go with it. It may not. I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm off my rocker here with all that, but there's definitely a real transhumanist plan. And there's definitely real technologies that they're developing, and there's definitely people who have developed these technologies and studied these technologies who are saying, that the spiritual implications are exactly what I'm talking about. The manifestation of demonic forces or something of that sort, archonic forces, into our reality. So you could see how many of these ideas all cross over, and it all ties back, once again, to the ancient mystery schools and the occult teachings thereof in these secret societies that interlock at many levels. And this book here by Alice Bailey, The Externalisation of the Hierarchy, talks about actually, revealing the plan, revealing the existence of this hierarchy to the public, of these spiritual forces that behind the scenes kind of give people in the control structure their marching orders. Okay, so this, in my view, these things, there's an intelligence beyond human that's guiding all of these different ideas and the different scenarios going on in our world today, and this will be what is revealed. Okay, that's what the whole premise of this book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, is about. That this hierarchy will reveal themselves very soon. And this is also synonymous with the revelation of the Antichrist and his minions in the book of Revelation of the Bible. It all ties together. And you could see it going on through the use of these technological ideas in our modern world. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, folks, and I'll catch you next time. Like and subscribe. Have a good night.